identify the main sections, the 5 main sections of the Declaration of Independence. So the Declaration of Independence is made up of 5 distinct parts. We have the introduction, the preamble, the body, which can be divided into 2 sections, and a conclusion. The introduction states that this document will declare the causes that have made it necessary for the American colonies to leave the British Empire. Having stated in the introduction that independence is unavoidably, even necessary, the preamble sets out principles that were already recognized to be self-evident by most 18th century Englishmen, closing with the statement that a long train of abuses and usurpations evinces a design to reduce a people under absolute despotism. It is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. The first section of the body of the Declaration gives evidence of the long train of abuses and usurpations heaped upon the colonists by King George III. The second section of the body states that the colonists had appealed in vain to their British brethren for a redress of their grievances. Having stated the conditions that made independence necessary, and having shown that these conditions existed in British North America, the Declaration concludes that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved. So select here and create this worksheet. Make a copy. Let me just save this. I'm going to hit make a copy. And I'm going to take you through these 5 sections. And so we're just going to write in the blue square. And here's the introduction. This is the first part. So you would write introduction right here. In Congress, July 4, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another. So here's America. We're one people. We were the 13 colonies at this time. And we were dissolving the political bands. Dissolving means we were breaking the bands. We were making it so they didn't exist anymore. And the bands are the ties, the things that tied us to Britain. So America and Britain were tied together politically. We were of the same government. We were connected. And now we're dissolving those bands, and we're becoming an independent country, no longer part of Great Britain. And to assume among the powers of earth the separate and equal station. So assume means to take. So now we're taking among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitled them. So we're creating our own country, is basically what it says. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. This simply means we have to explain why we're breaking away. We have to declare the causes which are forcing us to separate. So this is the introduction. And basically what it's saying is when you break away, you have to explain why. And this part, this is called the preamble. And this is the part we did in the previous assignment. We went through this in detail. And this is basically the theory. And this theory mostly came from John Locke. And it's this idea: governments are created to protect our rights. When they don't, the people can alter or abolish the government. But you can only do so, again, if he says, when there's been a long train of abuses. It's in here. I'm not seeing it right now, but in here there's, oh, there it is, when there's been a long train of abuses. And so that means that the government's done over and over really big, major things. And this is the preamble. And then we get to the body. And this is the first body section. And I'm not going to read the preamble because we've already read it. And I'm going to just introduce this section. He says, such has been the patient sufferance meaning the colonies are patiently suffering. And such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. So he's saying we have to change our government. He says the history of the present king of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries. If we look at the history of Great Britain and our king, they keep repeatedly injuring us. And usurpations, they keep taking more power, all having a direct establishment of an absolute tyranny. And that means the same thing that he said above, absolute despotism, when the government controls all things. Absolute tyranny, absolute despotism. The government has all power and the people don't have any rights over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. Candid means honest. So during the Enlightenment, there was this big emphasis on evidence, on science. The scientific method exists at this time, and people believe that things had to be proven through evidence. And this is what Thomas Jefferson's doing. He's saying, okay, so we've got the theory here that governments are supposed to protect your rights. And when they don't, you can overthrow them. Now we're going to prove to you that the government is not protecting our rights. And so there's this long list. These are all the bullet points. And he's trying to prove that the king is trying to create absolute tyranny, that the king is oppressive, and that the government, they have a right to overthrow the government. And so here is the proof that the king is terrible. And then there's this long list. And we're not going to go through all these lists, but I'm going to share a couple. So he's refused to agree to good laws, is this first one. He's refused to pass laws that people want. A lot of these you guys will recognize. He has made judges dependent on his will alone. So judges should be neutral. But he's saying, well, the judges are just giving the rulings that the king wants. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent them to harass our people. So he keeps sending these different forms of officers, tax collectors, and enforcers. He's kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. Meaning, we don't want the British soldiers here, but the king has sent them here, and we're voting to, we haven't given them permission to be here, but the king is forcing them on us. For quartering large bodies of armed troops among us. So now they're like having to live in our houses. That means quartering. For cutting off our trade with all parts of the world. So they're not allowed to trade with other places. For imposing taxes on us without our consent. This is the famous no taxation without representation. For depriving us, in many cases, of the benefits of trial by jury. We mentioned this. So if you were accused of smuggling, they would have a special trial. You'd have to go to Canada, where there would be a judge appointed to judge, and you wouldn't have a jury from Boston, because the jury from Boston wouldn't convict people of smuggling. And so these are kind of the examples of what he's saying of why the king is oppressive. And so there's the proof. And then this next section right here, this is the second body. And basically it's saying this: we have done all we can to stop this. Okay? In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Petition means we've sent letters and complaint and asked them, please stop doing this. And our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. So every time we're like, please don't do this, they do it again. He says, a prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. So here we are, we're a free people, and yet we've got this tyrant that's trying to rule over us. And here they talk about how we've done all that we could to stop this. And this is the conclusion. And so the pieces all fit together really well. We've got the theory that, hey, if the government is created to protect your rights, and if it doesn't, then you can overthrow it. Well, the government is, not protecting their rights, is taking it away. And you've done all that you could. We've done all that we could. And therefore, here's the conclusion. We're independent. And so this is the conclusion. They're declaring independent. We are independent. I'm forgotten, and they're independent. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America and General Congress, assembled, appealing to the supreme judge of the world. So basically, they're like, God, you can even be our judge. For the rectitude of our intentions, do in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states. So we're like, we're no longer colonies, we're countries, we're states. And they're absolved. That means we've ended all allegiance to the British crown. It means the British cannot rule over us. All political connection between them and the state of Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved. The British can't tell us what to do anymore. We're completely independent. And it's kind of, we're completely independent countries. These United States. He's saying like there's 13 states. As free and independent states, they have full power to levy war. So we can go to war if we want. We can conclude peace. We can create alliances. We can control our own trade. We can do all things which independent countries can do. And so that's what they're saying.